As I mentioned in previous Formula 1 videos, the end of the turbocharged era brought a host of new teams, constructors, engine manufacturers and engine types into the sport. Some, like Cosworth and Judd, used V8s. Ferrari and Lamborghini went for V12, but the former was more successful than the latter. An Italian firm called Motori Moderni tried to bring back the flat 12. Honda and Renault used V10s, selling them to McLaren and Williams with great success. Those were all fairly conventional approaches. They had been seen before, but one man went in a slightly different direction. Italian engineer Franco Rocci had a different idea. Rocci had made a name for himself by coming up with the brilliant and famous 3-litre V8s found in the Ferrari 308 in the late 1970s. But after he was dismissed from Ferrari in 1980, he started working on a 3.5-litre W12 engine. This is a highly unusual design. As you can see in the picture, the W12 placed the cylinders in 3 banks of 4, 2 on the left and 1 on the right side of the engine. This unusual design attracted the attention of a businessman by the name of Ernesto Vita. He looked at the F1 engine situation with dollar signs in his eyes, hoping to make a quick buck by selling engines to an F1 team. He bought the rights to Rocci's mad motor and spent the entirety of 1989 looking for a team to sell it to. Those teams, most likely recognizing a bad idea when they saw one, did not bite. After a year of searching, Vita had had enough. Most likely under the motto of "you could have had all of this," he set up his own team, Life Racing Engines. Life was a translation of his family name, Vita. And even though Vita was a businessman, he couldn't build a car from scratch, hindered by budget issues. So he had to look for a chassis elsewhere, and he found one. 1 year before, First Racing tried to make the jump to Formula 1 with the L189. But it was hastily designed, failed the crash test, and never made it to its first Grand Prix. Even the car's designer didn't like it, calling it unsafe and nothing more than an interesting flower pot. But Vita didn't really seem to care about this and bought the chassis. Former Ferrari engineer Gianni Morelli was then brought in to bring the engine and the chassis together in a competent fashion, and somehow he made it work. So Life was ready for the 1990 season, albeit with only one chassis, one engine and virtually no spares. Brought in to pilot the L190 was Australian Gary Brabham, the son of legendary driver and team boss Jack Brabham. But even the Brabham genes couldn't help the fact that the W12 was a horrible engine. The conventional V8s, V10s and V12s run by the competition were kicking out somewhere between 600 and 700 horsepower. The W12? 480. The engine's size also ruined handling because it made the car top heavy. That was because it had both the properties of a V8 and a straight 4. And as if all of that wasn't bad enough, the L190 was also the heaviest car in the whole field. In fact, the L190 was so slow, it showed pace comparable to that of a Formula 3 car. In fact, it would most likely have been outclassed by a Formula 3000 racer. For context, pole position for the opening race at Phoenix went to Gerhard Berger with a time of 1:28.664. Gary Brabham's fastest time in pre-qualifying, 2 minutes and 7.4 seconds. That's nearly 40 seconds slower. It even lacked 35 seconds compared to Roberto Moreno's Eurobrun, the fastest car in pre-qualifying. For the second race, Brabham never even set a time in pre-qualifying. Why? Well, because his engine grinded to a halt after just 400 yards. It was later revealed that Life's engineers had gone on strike and hadn't put any oil in the car before Brabham went out onto the track. All of this led the Australian to say,
"Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out."
And leave Life after just 2 races. He never competed in Formula 1 again. In his place came F1 veteran Bruno Giacomelli, who hadn't raced in Formula 1 in 7 years. His debut came at round 3 of the championship at Imola. Here, the car's lack of power really became a problem. In fact, it had less power than the McLaren M23 Giacomelli drove on his debut in 1977. Giacomelli later said he was scared driving the L190 at Imola, fearing the faster cars would have struck him from behind. Luckily for him, that never happened, but things only got worse for Life. Because not only was the engine underpowered, bulky, heavy and slow, it was also extremely unreliable. It never completed more than 8 laps of any given circuit. It had failed to get through pre-qualifying in San Marino, Monaco, Canada, Mexico, France, Britain, Germany, Hungary, Belgium and Italy. After 12 consecutive disasters, Life was done with the W12 engine. For Route 13, they ditched it in favour of a Judd CV V8. It was an affordable alternative to other engines and provided decent performance for relatively low costs. So the car was modified to fit the new engine and Giacomelli set off. Unfortunately, there was one thing the engineers forgot to change: the engine cover, which meant it no longer fit now that the new engine had been installed. So as soon as Giacomelli picked up pace at the Estoril circuit, it broke loose and flew off. For the 13th consecutive time, the Life L190 failed to get out of pre-qualifying. Even the new, more powerful and more reliable engines could not save Life. At Jerez, Giacomelli once again came last in pre-qualifying, and after the Spanish Grand Prix, Life Racing engines cut their losses and withdrew from the championship, and after that, it quickly folded. Simply put, the Life L190 was a debacle from the very start. The engine was overly complicated, the chassis was subpar, and the team was constantly short on funds. The last time we saw the L190 was at the 2009 Goodwood Festival of Speed, which had been returned to the W12 configuration. Perhaps this quote from F1 journalist Nigel Roebuck sums the whole thing up. One day Bruno had told me that he had heard the engine momentarily making a strange sound. His suspicion was that all of the cylinders had been operating.